started with the good stuff. All right, so hello everyone and welcome to today's learning session. I'm your moderator, Dua. Thank you for taking the time to join us. For our session today, we wanted to give you the opportunity to ask all your questions and also gain a clear understanding of our product's strategic direction. We want you to discover the exciting features, enhancements, and innovations that lie ahead as Dave, one of our product managers, walks us through our 2023 roadmap and shares insights into the vision that is driving Roadmunk into the future. Okay, I'm just keeping an eye on our attendance. All right, so first of all, let's start with a couple of housekeeping items. This session is going to be recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that. It will be shared with you also after the session, our post webinar or post-session email. So keep an eye out for that. The slide deck will also be shared because it does have some valuable links that you can use afterwards. And although the mics are muted today, you can definitely utilize the question box. We've got a couple of colleagues answering the questions throughout, and we'll have some Q&A time at the very end. To help us answer your questions, on that note, we've got Kate, one of our customer success managers here at Roadmunk, as well as Cheryl. She's one of our onboarding and education experts. So again, feel free to utilize that question box. Our presenter, as I mentioned, Dave, is one of our product managers, and he has a wealth of knowledge to share with you today, but also he's actually one of the team members that worked very closely on developing this 2023 roadmap. So it's an amazing resource to have him here with us today. Our agenda is very basic for today, so we're going to take that walkthrough of the 2023 roadmap and then followed by some questions we want to answer live. And throughout, we'll be answering your questions in the question box. On that note, let's go ahead and start with our first poll. And for this one, it just gives us a really clear indication of who our invites are reaching, who's actually attending our sessions. We want to make sure that we're touching on the right audience here and presenting the valuable information that you'll need. So this really gives us an indication of who we're reaching. Amazing. So we've got a great combination of beginners and then of more expert audience. So definitely a lot of value in this session for both. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you, everyone. I want to give Dave as much time as possible. And on that note, Dave, I will pass it on to you. I think you're muted still, Dave.
Gosh, of course I am. The joys of Zoom. Hi, everyone. For those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, either in a call or just via one of the many articles that you may have seen my face on in a knowledge base. My name is Dave Williamson. I am the PM for road mapping and visualizations here at Roadmunk. And today I'm very excited to take you through some of the really great stuff that we're working on in 2023. So let's dive in, let's take a look, and let's kick it off first with the 3 pillars of how we roadmap. A lot of people, when they look at our roadmap, often have a lot of questions about what it is, how it works, how we build it out. And so I wanted to take a couple minutes just to walk through it at the start before we dive into the fun stuff. So starting us off, a roadmap has to be alive. Any good roadmap is not a static document. It's not something that just sits there and is a fixture for your entire team to look at. It should be dynamic. It should be constantly adjusted as new information becomes available. And it should be something that grows with you and with your team based on a number of different factors, whether that be internal or external factors, whether those be pieces of input that you've received from your users, so many other little things, the direction the market's going, something that I know a lot of teams have faced recently, including our team and many other teams across the SaaS industry. Having a roadmap that is alive, a living, breathing document is so crucial to building out a good roadmap. And so we always try to look at our roadmap as something where we'll release it and we'll continue adjusting as new information becomes available. The other side of it, and something that helps it to be more alive, is that it is constantly input driven. As a lot of you know, we offer feedback and ideas modules in Roadmunk. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Feedback is one of my favorite little tools that we have. And the really great thing about those tools is that it helps us to bring in a lot of our users' feedback and a lot of our users' input into the things that we should be building and the areas that we should be focusing on. This has helped us a number of times to build business critical features for many of our users and help us to expand our offering in extremely strategic and interesting ways. And last but not least, the one that I often have trouble with, but don't tell my boss that, the roadmap needs to be focused. If you are going in and building a roadmap, you need to have a clear narrative of what you want this roadmap to say. This roadmap is a living, breathing object that's been driven by the input of what your users want. So there is a narrative there as to why you are building this roadmap. Every single thing that you have should have a story associated with it, and it should be something that helps you to maintain that alignment across your teams, that vision across all of the people working on it, and also help to prevent from some of the distractions that can pop up or the little side roads that a lot of us in the product industry often end up wandering down as we're building out new products. So now that we've gone over that, let's dive in to some of the fun stuff. And kicking us off, we have something that actually was launched already, but I think needs to get a little special place in this roadmap review here. And that is our Cascade and Condense items feature. Now, some of you might be familiar, for those of you who have been with Roadmunk for a couple of years, with the waterfall and string features that we previously had. These were really fun, quick and easy ways to organize your roadmap without having to manually drag and drop everything and set it up in the way you want. However, there were a couple limitations to it, and we didn't really like those limitations. So we made some changes to how it operates and how it works, and we even changed one of the features around. The Cascade feature is the same old waterfall that you know and love. If you right-click on the header of any roadmap, you'll see a menu that now gives you an option to cascade all of the items in it into a gorgeous, easy-to-view waterfall where every item has its own line, similar to the Gantt charts that we know and love. Condense, on the other hand, is our new take on the string feature. String was a bit of an interesting one and a bit of a polarizing one because we had some people who loved it and some people who absolutely hated the fact that if they clicked it accidentally, all their items would move all the way across their roadmap. Never really fun. So we made a little bit of a change. We changed it to be a non-destructive organizational tool where users can actually cascade using the same workflow that they use to condense, or opposite way, condense using the same workflow they use to cascade, and quickly and easily condense all of those items into the smallest possible space, meaning that items are finding the best fit on the roadmap, and it's making your roadmap a lot easier to read. This is especially great if you're somebody who is working with that living, breathing roadmap because it lets you add new items and not have to worry about going in and manually adjusting to make sure that everything can fit onto a printout, onto a PDF, onto a PowerPoint. It's a pretty cool little tool, definitely worth checking out. And one of my favorite little fun quality of life launches of this year so far. But we do have some other really great stuff coming. And that, of course, leads me to our first major change, the refresh table view. Now, a lot of you might not know this, but the table view is actually our most used visualization across Roadmunk. And the reason being is that it's kind of a safe haven for users. A lot of people are more familiar with spreadsheets than they are with Kanban boards, with Gantt charts, which we've affectionately turned into our swim lane and timeline. And so for a lot of people, when they're starting out, the table view is the place that they'll go to make sure that they're building their roadmaps, getting all their data in, and, well, just making great stuff happen. But unfortunately, there are limitations. There are things like pagination, which can be a bit of a pain sometimes. There are certain visual elements which aren't there because everything is text-based. So in order to make things a little bit better, we've taken cues from our team on the ideas side of the world, and we have adopted a similar style to them so we can have a better consistency across our tools. And one of the really great things about the table that we're building out is that now you're going to have a smoother and cleaner experience when working with larger amounts of data. This means that if you have 100 items or if you have 5,000 items, you can scroll from the top to the bottom of that list and not have to worry about it crashing your browser. Never a fun experience for anyone. On top of that, we're also taking a couple of steps to make things a bit easier to use in the table itself, including more visually appealing approaches to things like our multi-select field, our percentage field, and our team members fields. And on top of that, we're also introducing a couple of fun little updates here to some of our icons, our layout, and of course, as you can see in the screenshot there, our date picker. For those of you who have used it, not my favorite part of the application, but this new one, pretty darn great. Alrighty, on to the next slide. So along with this, we are also going to be looking at how we can update the experience of road mapping itself to make it a cleaner, smoother, and more scalable experience as we continue to grow what Roadmunk offers. And one of the ways that we're doing that is we are updating our toolbars and our panels. Now, a lot of you have probably seen some of the really great stuff that we do with exports, with integrations, with formatting, but you may have noticed that for every single icon you click on, it's a different experience. Sometimes you get a drop-down menu, a brand new screen, a panel. It's not as smooth and as consistent as it should be. So one of the big changes that we're going to be making is what we call panelization. This is where we're taking a lot of those same familiar pop-outs and drop-downs and modals and every other interesting way that the team in 2018 decided to make things fun and make it a smooth, streamlined experience that doesn't remove you from the roadmap. We wanted to give users something that has a clean and consistent experience and is something that we can carry over to other places of the application as well. On top of that, we're also going to be making updates, as you can see in the screenshots here, to the toolbars themselves. We're going for a more framed approach, something that's a bit cleaner, a bit easier to use, and on top of that, something that we believe will give users an easier time when they're looking to get started or to onboard their teammates. We realized that the button clusters that we were using weren't really the best, and so our team's going in and cleaning it up and giving you a smoother experience where all of the tools that you need to find are in one place and all of the icons that you're working with are intuitive. It's a really great direction. I'm really excited for it. And on top of that, there are some great changes coming as well to both the item card and the sharing settings so that we can have a matching experience with these updated panels and toolbars. We can hop on to the next slide now. Now, this one is one that I've not been allowed to put a screenshot out for on our roadmap, but I'm finally glad that I've been able to put one out for you here. We are updating our swim lane and timeline views as well. As our customers have grown with us, we've noticed that they have started to find new and creative ways to use roadmaps, but a part of that also means that they need to find ways to display more data and really control the visual of the roadmap to build these rich and information-rich, words are a struggle today, I apologize, fun and information-rich roadmaps that they can share with their team, that they can present to their stakeholders, or that they can use internally to drive the development of their products. So what we've done is we've taken an approach where we want to get that data on the screen, finding cleaner ways to present as much or as little data as you want in your roadmap. But on top of that, finding ways to clean up some of the bigger frustrations that users may have seen throughout the years with some of our popular features. For example, sub-items. A lot of our users aren't really the most impressed with the tooltip on the timeline posting the sub-items. So we're looking for ways that we can get creative with it, that we can have all of that data in one place without it being tucked away or hidden or needing a knowledge base article to tell you where it is. The really great thing about this change as well is that we are adopting modern architecture for a lot of our UI so that we can have a faster cleaner, and smoother experience. We realize that as roadmaps continue to grow and as more items continue to appear on those roadmaps, you're going to end up seeing a little bit of lag here and there. Shout out to the person with 10,000 items on your roadmap. That was quite an adventure for me. But the really great thing that I love about this change is that it gives us an opportunity to really play with some of the stuff that we haven't been able to play with in the past, present more of the data that we haven't been able to present, and give you as the user a really clean, aesthetically pleasing view that we're known for. Not to brag, but I like to think that we do it best. And still have that really kind of smooth and fun experience that you would expect from any modern SaaS product. On to the next slide. And speaking of that, of course, we are also looking into ways that we can expand existing features. One of those being our item hierarchy or our sub-items feature. As a lot of you who have used this feature know, you can only currently create a parent and child relationship. You can't ladder that down several layers deep, and that does limit some of our users from being able to effectively use the roadmaps in the way that they want to use them. So there are many steps that we're going to be taking so that we can start to build out these multiple levels of item hierarchy over the next couple of months. We're going to be looking into things like removing the date dependency on parent items so that the items that live under the parent items don't necessarily have to fall within that date span. It's exceptionally frustrating if you do end up accidentally adding a date to an item and suddenly the whole thing changes. Not the most fun experience. So we wanted to smooth that out. We wanted to give you a better, cleaner experience here that opens the doorway to a lot of other additional changes that we can make, including things like potentially in the future, synchronizing item hierarchy from other tools like Jira and Azure DevOps. But you didn't hear that from me. The really fun thing about this as well is that we are going to be using some really great new UI changes to make sure that we can accommodate as many or as few layers as you want to have. These levels that you're going to be working with are going to be extremely usable, extremely snappy, and extremely quick to work with. And, well, we want them to also look aesthetically pleasing as well. So yeah, a couple fun things there. On to the next one, and this is a big one. I should know, I have been asked for this since 2019. Roadmap collections. This is a huge step for us. We've been exploring ways that we can do better roadmap organization, and one of those ways that we've looked into is a roadmap collection, allowing users to quickly assign and sort roadmaps into a number of collections so that their team can quickly and easily find things without having to worry about digging through thousands of roadmaps just to get to a single important document. This is a really fun one because it gives users a lot more control over how they are able to really share their roadmaps, collaborate on content, and, well, build out some of those team projects that they're working on, especially in a more crowded workplace. It's a pretty fun feature. It is something that is, of course, still in the works, but definitely will likely be available for early access sometime soon. Wink. I can't wink without saying wink, but on to the next one, bulk management of teams. Now, as a lot of us who are working in larger teams know, it can be frustrating having to go through and assign all 500, 1,000, 5,000 users on our team to a specific team within the organization. While Teams is amazing for getting sharing right for a lot of users and getting permissions right for users at scale, the one gap that we had after launching was that we didn't offer a way to quickly import users into a specific team or into a number of teams. So we have added that feature in. This one is coming within the coming weeks, if I'm remembering correctly. It's right now in early access for some of our users. And on top of that, it's just as simple as populating a CSV and importing it, and the system does the rest. It's a really quick and easy way to manage your account as an administrator, and on top of that, make sure that everybody is where they're supposed to be. Speaking of administrators, one of the features that we launched this past year that I think does also deserve, and by past year, I mean 2 months ago, that I think does also deserve a little bit of recognition is the new integration control set for admins. We realized that for admins on professional and enterprise plans, there are a couple of gaps when it comes to controlling data, especially for those who are using multiple environments with their integrated tools. So for example, teams that are using multiple staging environments, which roll up into a single prod environment. One of the really great things that we've been able to do is put in place 2 controls. The first one is one-way enforcement, which allows you to, on an integration by integration basis, say which specific sources can only be integrated one way, meaning that the data can come into Roadmunk, but user changes are not reflected back in the source platform. In addition to that, we also have been looking into ways that we can suspend the synchronization in case of an emergency, or just in case something does need to be shut off right away. We've created what effectively is a kill switch, where you're able to go in, toggle off an integration, and it suspends every single roadmap that is using that integration without removing the data from those roadmaps. Meaning that if you do need to bring those roadmaps back to life, you can go back in, toggle it on, and it will continue syncing following the same schedule it was on without any issues. They're both pretty cool features. And on top of that, they are amazing controls for administrators on enterprise teams because it gives you more power over how the data that you're pulling from your other platforms is being used and more control over the security of your data. On to the next slide. Now, this is a very exciting one for us. As a lot of you know, we here at Roadmunk are a part of the larger Tempo group, and we have a lot of amazing tools that we offer. And one of those amazing tools, of course, is Structure. Now, Structure allows people to better organize their data that they're bringing in from Jira and give them this really simple to use tool that can be manipulated in hundreds of different ways to get the exact visualization of their data that they want. It is a really cool tool. If you haven't tried it out, definitely it's worth checking it out. And on top of that, we are excited to finally be building an integration with Structure, allowing users to transition their projects on Roadmap into Structure and build out these new structures based on the way that their roadmap is set up. It's a really great project. There's more coming on it in the coming months, including an early access program, which is launching in the next quarter. So definitely it's worth keeping an eye out for that. I say that as though the next quarter isn't 3 days away, but it's launching next quarter. So definitely keep an eye on the newsletter if you're not already signed up. And we will make sure to let you know when you can sign up for that, because it is a great way to seamlessly transition from the strategy side on your roadmap to that execution side on Structure and get stuff done. I've been told I'm not allowed to swear on this meeting, so, you know.
If you can
I mean, I bet $20 on it with Cheryl, so, you know, we'll see what happens. Alrighty, on to one of my absolute favorite little pieces of what we've been doing over the past year, which is revamping ideas. And as some of you who are on the Ideas Early Access program know, we have been building out a solution called Idea Boards. This is a really interesting take on prioritization, very similar to what we're doing in road mapping, allowing you to create multiple views, allowing you to build out these really data-rich and complex ideas. And on top of that, introducing some really great new features, including things like formula fields and rating fields as well. It is a huge step for us. And on top of that, it is leaps and bounds ahead of our current ideas module. Now, in this quarter and in the coming quarter, we are going to be working on a couple of really cool things as we gear up for the public launch of this feature. First and foremost, idea cards. As I mentioned earlier, panelization is something that we as a company are working towards for a number of the different tools and drop-downs and modals that we have. And ideas is one of the places that's also going to be impacted by this. In ideas, we are going to have an ideas card panel, which will pop out from the right-hand side of your screen and give you all of the details on your idea that you need. However, unlike our current prioritization boards that we have in the Ideas 1.0 module, let's call it, this one allows you to do so much more. File attachments, rich text descriptions, fields, everything that you would need to be able to quickly and easily build out a really, really strong idea that can drive your road mapping. On top of that, next slide. We're also looking at custom view filters and custom view types. As a lot of you have probably seen, we have timeline, swim lane, and table view on the roadmap side. However, in ideas, we've only ever had the prioritization board. This is why it's going to be such a great step in the right direction for us to be able to have these really fun new view types. There's a few that we already have in the early access program, and a few more that are going to be coming in the coming months and coming quarters as well. On top of that, we're also looking at ways that you can custom filter these idea boards so you can narrow down the ideas that you're focused on within these views. And on top of that, create brand new views based on brand new filter sets. It's a really fun approach to it, very similar to what you see on the road mapping side. And on top of that, it employs a really visual approach to your planning so that, as you can see in the screenshot here, if you have rating scales, you can have 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. Percentage fields are a draggable bar. There's so many fun little things that we're doing. And if you're not in that early access program, I would 100% recommend getting on board because it is pretty darn cool. On to the next slide, please, and thank you. Now, a lot of us who have used the ideas module know that one of the really great things about building out ideas is that you can connect them to your roadmap items. And we didn't want to leave that behind. So one of the things that we are currently working on is taking the ideas from idea boards and allowing you to connect those directly to roadmap items on the roadmaps side of the business. The one improvement, though, that we do want to make is that we want to show more data. Right now in our item cards, you can only see just the name of the idea. We want to pass along more data that's more relevant to the users on the road mapping side, because we realize that as users build out and ideate on the ideas side, those teams are not necessarily going to be the strategic teams that are building the roadmaps. Sometimes they are, and it's great, and they have that context. But if you're somebody who's coming in as a stakeholder in a roadmap, or you're somebody who's coming in as a secondary user or a product owner who's working in that roadmap, you're not going to have all of the context that you need. And we don't want you having to hop between multiple modules just to find out that this acronym means this. So why not make it easier, and why not get that data into the roadmap where it needs to be so that you can view it and hopefully one day use it in the roadmap. Last but not least, user role permissions for ideas. This one's a short one, but of course it is a very straightforward one. If you're building out idea boards, you want to make sure that you have user permissions. Sometimes people don't need to be able to edit everything, so setting them up as viewers, setting them up as editors, it's a pretty straightforward one, but a very important one for teams as they are working on their idea boards. And last but not least, and this is a really exciting one, we are looking into capacity planning, and we are building out a capacity planning integration. As I mentioned earlier, we are part of the larger Tempo group, and we offer a lot of amazing tools. And one of those tools that we have been working on offers a really amazing capacity solution. Now, for those of you who are already in the early access program for this, you've probably already had a chance to play around with this, see how it's reflected in Roadmunk, and see how some of those calculations are done. But if you are not signed up for the early access program, please keep an eye on those newsletters. Please keep an eye on those little pop-ups that come up in app, because this is a huge step for us. It integrates directly with your roadmap and allows you to assign capacity values to a number of items across your roadmap so that you can quickly and easily show your capacity in a live environment. It's very fun, very exciting, and yeah, definitely worth keeping an eye out on. And back to Dua for a second here.
Thank you, Dave. So that was amazing. Everybody is, just so you know, in the Q&A, I've seen a lot of people excited about a lot of those features that you mentioned. And we do actually have a public facing roadmap. So we want to make sure that you're all aware of it. Obviously, we've linked it in our session, in our slide deck here today, but we want to see if there is a different way that we can communicate it. We want to know how many of you are aware of it and not. That way, maybe we can push another communication out there so that everybody has access to it and you can keep an eye out for all these amazing features and when they're coming out. All right, okay, so unfortunately, most of you are not aware of it. So we will definitely increase our communication around that, and hopefully this slide deck today will at least provide a direct link for you to access, but this gives us an idea of everybody else. Okay, it seems like we have pretty good participation. All right, yeah, it seems like the mass majority do not know about this amazing new resource that we have for our customers. So yeah, look out for our post session email. We will have that linked for you, but we'll also push more communication towards that. All right, Dave, back to you.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Dua. And yes, just like Dua said, this is such an amazing tool for teams. We update the roadmap regularly. So if you do want to get the most up-to-date version of what we're working on, and also some sneak peeks at things like the designs, the thought behind things, and well, sneak peeks at my color palette choices for roadmaps, by all means, feel free to check it out. It's roadmunk.com/roadmap. We are very excited to share it with you. So please make sure that you're bookmarking that and that you give it a visit every once in a while. Now on to the fun part, Q&A.
We do have quite a lot of questions, so we'll try to get through them as much as possible, and I will try to condense the similar ones. So we had one of our first questions. We track all of our initiatives in Jira tickets, and I love the integration. However, there are some limitations. We're not able to sync fields that are multi-user picker, for example, and we mentioned an example, but let's see the rest of the question. It really limits the ability to show what product each ticket is associated with or what team this ticket is for. Does Roadmunk have any plans to improve their Jira integration?
This is a great question, mostly because I'm somebody who also was very reliant on Jira prior to coming to Roadmunk. So definitely I've seen some limitations that we've had. And one of the biggest things when it comes to certain field types that we can't pull in, or certain field types that we don't pull in at this time, is that if we were to pull them in, the format wouldn't necessarily be something that would be the cleanest for users to present or to read. So a lot of the times it's a very intentional decision to exclude things. However, there are times where we are able to find workarounds on fields and start bringing them in. And we're constantly doing that. Over the past year, some of you may have noticed that we've started allowing you to bring in things like additional date fields from Jira, as well as a couple of other different field types, including cascading fields, so our cascading select fields. So with it, we're constantly looking for these opportunities. If you haven't already, and there are specific fields that you want, definitely reach out to either your CSM or to the support team. We can get that filed as a feature request, and quite often we are pretty receptive to that. We're a Jira shop ourselves here at Roadmunk and in the larger Tempo group. So the easier we can make it for you, it also means the easier it is for us. So definitely. Yeah.
And the more we have of those feature requests, the bigger the feature, the more we can push for it. So definitely something that we're looking at. Are there any plans for an iOS app or accessibility on tablet?
This is a fun question. So no plans at this time for an iOS app. However, I will say that we are looking into using Material UI for our front end in some of the updates that we're making to the table view, to the swim lane and the timeline, which will hopefully allow you to get a little bit of a better drag and drop on certain things and easier clickability when you're working on a tablet. As most of the other panelists on the call know, I am notorious for carrying around my iPad with me everywhere. If I show up to the office, I have got it attached to my hip, and I also enjoy using Roadmunk on it every now and again. That being said, the experience could be significantly better and should be significantly better. So we are working on that. No plans for an iOS app at this time, but it's something that comes up quite regularly. So again, make sure you're getting those feature requests in, and definitely when we do have early access programs for those new iterations of the table view and the swim lane and timeline, please make sure to check them out. If there's any opportunities for us to improve, we're always looking for them. So yeah.
Amazing. Another question, how can I address as a user performance issues, but also how is Roadmunk addressing them?
Ooh, the P word. This is the fun one. So performance issues kind of fall into two buckets. The first one is application performance, and the second one is perceived performance. Sometimes you can have great application performance, but the perceived performance is not what you expect. And sometimes the perceived performance is great, but the application performance is terrible and you have no idea how it's working the way it should. I always like to preface with that. So I'll start with what Roadmunk's doing for performance, and that is a lot. We are regularly having teams going in and working on performance within specific areas of the application. We are moving off of older technologies and using newer technologies to better ourselves for our users. We've recently made the change, as some of you may have seen, to the timeline, where we have moved off of a knockout and view based tool and into a React-based backend. And we are very excited to finally have something a little bit cleaner and easier to use. We're constantly improving though, and that's kind of the really fun thing about it. We want to make sure that we're targeting these areas of frustration for users, because as you continue to grow with our tool, we want to make sure that we're continuing to be ready for all of those fun edge cases. Shout out again to the 10,000 item roadmap. That was quite a fun one in these past couple of weeks. But as a user, the one thing I would say, especially if you're somebody who is working with larger roadmaps, is working with more content, I would definitely recommend looking at how that content is formatted, how that content is organized. One of the things that you may run into that isn't necessarily the easiest to handle is going to be having to deal with the readability of things as you add more items into the roadmap. Not necessarily the actual performance of the tool, but the performance of the roadmap when it comes to presenting it to your stakeholders or to your teams. Mm-hmm. So definitely trying to keep that under control will not only help to reduce some of the performance hiccups you might see, especially on those larger roadmaps, but also will help your teams to get a better understanding of the content you're trying to present. A great example that comes to mind, and actually, I think Cheryl was in this call with me, who's been answering questions in the background here. A great example that comes to mind is that one of our users had a roadmap that spanned across 3 years and covered every single thing that was going on for every single division of their product, which I was like, this is fun. but also we can make it more focused. We can break it down into year chunks. We can split these divisions into separate roadmaps and roll them up into a portfolio so it's easier to see. There's a lot of solutions there, and definitely strategy-wise, check in with your CSM. If you are onboarding, check in with your onboarding specialist, and they'll be more than happy to walk you through some of those best practices. I believe there's also an article in the knowledge base or the learning center about it. I'd have to take a look, but definitely from our side, we're constantly working on it. And if you're finding an area that is consistently lacking the performance that you expect it to have, flag it for us, because yeah, we like going on those little bug hunting expeditions so we can make your experience better. So yeah,
For sure.
hopefully that answers it.
That was a comprehensive answer. Thank you, Dave. Another question we have: when I have two roadmaps in Roadmunk, and in both I have the same names of the components, when creating portfolio from those two roadmaps, components will be matched? Will the components be matched? I'm assuming fields.
Yes, so it should be. The key to it is that you need to have an account level field for those. The way that we break down our fields is we have them in roadmap level and account level. At roadmap level, it's very similar to what Jira does, where it silos everything into a single project. And then if you're rolling it up, it's all unique values all the way across your entire workspace. Whereas account level fields that we have give you the opportunity to create values that can be shared across multiple roadmaps. That way, when you pull them up into a portfolio roadmap, let's say, you can have all of those ready to go so that you can have these common values. And on top of that, I believe we still actually list in our fields dropdown on the format panel for portfolios common fields. So let's say you have a status field that you're using across multiple roadmaps. If you do pull all of those roadmaps into a portfolio, it should be the top section in your format panel. You can click in to add a header, and there should be a small subsection in that dropdown for common fields where you can see which fields are shared across these roadmaps. If you're finding that they're not necessarily really connecting, I would say definitely check to make sure that you're using account level fields. And on top of that, if you are using roadmap level fields, definitely promote them to account level and then use the field merge tool to merge them together. You can match values across them so that it keeps all the values in each of the roadmaps, gets everything consistent, and make sure that when you're rolling them up, you're not having any of those duplicate values or standalone fields that can be so bothersome sometimes.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. Actually, what I wanted to mention here also is that we have a monthly learning session that happens just like this one at the last Thursday of each month. And the next one is going to be Road Mapping 101, where we cover a lot of these smaller issues. But we thought to take a little break from the very big roadmap questions and have a couple of smaller ones. Let's go back to the roadmap questions. However, will multiple levels of sorting be available?
This is a great question.
There's an example to elaborate, but I think you got the idea from the question, right?
Yes. So being able to say, sort by ideas, then sort by status, or sort by, budget spend, then sort by.
Yeah, so alphabetically and then by priority or such example.
Oh yeah. So right now we're looking at how our filters work in Roadmunk. As a lot of you know, our filters and our sorting are really, I don't know the nicest way to put it, but basic, for lack of better ways to describe it. They can do some pretty cool things, but at the end of the day, if you are wanting to apply more complex filters or multiple filters, it does cause a few blocks there. So what we want to do is look at better ways that we can provide filtering, not only in the table view, but also in our visualizations as well. This includes things like complex filtering, so similar to what you were asking about there, Dua, but also things as well like dynamic filters. One of the biggest requests that we get from a lot of our users is to be able to say, I want to show only everything that is starting after today and have that dynamically update as the days go on. It's kind of, or this quarter, or whenever they want to be able to see things, or wherever they want to be able to see things. It's kind of one of those things where we want to do it and we want to get it right, but it's the getting it right part that's going to mean it's not an immediate thing that we are going to be working on and rolling out. But definitely keep an eye on that roadmap because it's something that's very top of mind for us.
All right, awesome. We had another question. I think this is related to Jira integration, but as you mentioned, Dave, roadmaps are live, and I need a way to show which items should have an end date related to a fixed milestone. Is this something on the roadmap?
Dependency linking is something that I really desperately want. Or sorry, milestone linking with dependencies, something that I really desperately want. There is one limitation to it that we have to work through, but it's something that I'm trying to keep on the roadmap. The only thing is, and of course, this is where the focused part comes into mind. With all the larger priorities that we're working on, it's not necessarily something that we're looking at in the short term. However, as most of the panelists here know, if I can convince a team in the hackathon to do it for me, then we have multiple hackathons a year. It's always fun. But if I can convince them to do it for me, then very likely it will get released very soon after. That's how we got the calendar export last year, which was one of my favorite launches of last year and one of our most popular export types.
Awesome. So add it to the idea list for our hackathon.
Oh, I've already got that. It's
Awesome.
going straight into the innovator. But yeah, it's definitely, it's something that I want. There are a couple little hurdles with it, but definitely as soon as and when we were able to get it ready, I mean, I want it done. I want it there. So yeah.
Awesome. We have another question about visualization. Will there be more ability to color by various pieces of metadata? So for example, I have items in timeline view organized by swim lanes, but would like to use an additional color to highlight specific line items, regardless of the swim lane.
Ooh, good question. Short answer, yes, eventually. Long answer on that one. It's something that will take a bit of building. The color palettes that we work with are so ingrained into the system that the changes to them can often be a little bit cumbersome, especially because the way that they're applied and the way that they're edited. So it makes it a little bit harder for us when we're working with the kind of global perspective of color palettes. That being said, there are a couple of innovative ways that we're looking into how we can make this a bit cleaner, and on top of that, get your data visualized the way that you want it and the color that you want it as well. And of course, in the interim, one of my favorite little workarounds is always the label suffix. For those of you who haven't yet found it, it is a cool little feature, a little bit too hidden for my liking, but in the format panel, you have the option to add a label suffix where you can add in an additional field into the label of an item in both the swim lane and the timeline. I have a slight proclivity for creating bizarre emoji sets that I use on my roadmaps to break things down there, but definitely the label suffix trick, always a great one, but it's something that we are going to be eventually looking into doing, and it is likely going to, spoilers on this one, it's likely going to revolve around some form of a dedicated status field. You did not hear that from me though, even though this is being recorded. Darn. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Two more questions, I think. And I'm a Roadmunk user and integrate the tool with Azure DevOps for creating roadmaps. There are a few custom fields created in ADO that come over to Roadmunk, but I'm able to select any custom fields as stream. Is there a way this can be done without redefining the same custom field in Roadmunk? I think this would be a really great question for our integration session.
I think it would as well. what I will say on this one is that one of the things with the Azure DevOps integration is that based on the way that certain fields are prepared on the ADO side, oftentimes it makes it a little bit harder to present them, similar to some of the struggles that we had on the Jira side. There is a list of field types that we do have and a list of specific default fields that we do have in our knowledge base, broken down so that you can see what is compatible and what's not. That being said, definitely, it's always worth bringing this into the integrations conversation because, like I said, we're always looking for new ways that we can kind of expand these offerings and really get something that works for you. So definitely check in on that integration session, but also make sure that you get this filed, sent straight to our support team so we can get that file as a feature request. Like Dua said earlier, the more requests that we can assign to a specific feature or a specific request, the easier it is for us to be able to push for those on our side.
All right, awesome. And one last question before we move on to the final close up and summary. We would like editable or live PNG that can be exported into PowerPoint. The current PNG ratio sizing prevents you from being able to see the whole roadmap on PowerPoint, and we currently have to use other tools to chop the roadmap into pieces. Is this something that will be available in the future?
Yes, and if I say no to this, the product designer on my team, Bella, would probably fly to Toronto and hit me across the back of the head because it is important. We realize that for a lot of our users, the roadmap itself is something that they're building here, but they're not necessarily presenting here. And I've experienced it myself, having to find the most creative ways to fit them into some of the slideshows that we've done in the past. So definitely, it's on our radar. We have some work that we're doing in export optimization coming later this year. On top of that, before anybody asks, yes, we are still keeping PDF exports top of mind and SVG exports. We just need to get there first. But once we do, that's when we can start exploring some of the more fun and creative ways to do things. So.
All right, awesome. Okay, so quite a lot of questions and a lot of them very valuable. I do want to remind you again that we have loads of really great resources linked in the slide deck, but we also have this last slide, which links you to our main resource areas. So you can go and find any answers that you might need. I also want to mention that we have, like I said, a session that happens every last Thursday of each month, and we use it to help you onboard very quickly with Roadmunk, answer your questions live as usual, and then also dive into some of the integrations. So a lot of the integration questions that we got today can definitely be answered during that session. All right, thank you everyone for attending. I do want to also flag that once we end the session today, there will be a survey pop-up. We really need you to answer the questions because they do help us figure out what you would like to hear from us in the future, if these sessions are working for you, serving their purpose, and really better the experience for you as we work on making these sessions more frequent. All right, so we'll leave you with those 5 minutes to fill in the survey for us. And thank you everyone for attending. Dave, thank you for an amazing session.
Thank you for having me, Dua, and thank you everybody for attending. I really appreciate you letting me ramble for the better part of an hour. And definitely, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. dw@tempo.io. Easy way to remember it. It's Arthur's little sister at tempo.io. God, that is a dated reference, but we appreciate you being here. And of course, take time to do the survey. Hopefully it's all good, because if not, they're probably not going to be happy with me and I'll have to, yeah. No.
I'm sure everyone enjoyed the session. We had amazing questions, but yeah, we can definitely always make the experience better for our audience. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day and great Canada Day, 4th of July next week. Goodbye, everyone.